from the PA Master Watershed Steward Program. And we have Jennifer Latsko and Mary Rooney to give the presentation.
Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. Okay. And also with us we have Rick Morrissey from the Monocacy Creek Watershed Association as well. So a little bit of background about what we're talking about tonight. Back in 2023, the Little Lehigh Watershed group, it came onto our radar about problems with elevated road salt getting into the environment. And we became very concerned about this. So we decided to study this over in the Little Lehigh. Little Lehigh Creek runs to the west of Allentown and flows into the Lehigh Creek in Allentown. And we studied chloride levels from salt in our creek and discovered that they were elevated, and we became quite concerned. And as a result, we wanted to take some action. And we started looking about what had been going on in the state of Pennsylvania, and we discovered a lot of people have been working on this locally, but nothing was really being done statewide in a cohesive way. So we've basically started a project here in the Lehigh Valley, and also we're working on a statewide project to work on this issue. And we're going to tell you about that tonight. Okay, so let's go forward here. Well, what's that? Extend your arm. Where do I need to point it at? At the screen? Okay. It's the big arrow button, right? All right. So this is what we're going to be talking about tonight. First of all, I'm going to talk about the causes and impacts of winter salting, and also about best management practices that municipalities and contractors can use. And then we're going to talk, Mary's going to talk about taking action here in the Lehigh Valley and Pennsylvania. And then we're going to be opening up for any questions that you may have. Okay. So this graph here basically shows the increase in the amount of salt that has been put down on the roads in the past 50 years in the United States. And you can see that during that time, it has more than doubled, okay? And the trend continues on today. It's just gradually increasing more and more. Okay, let's do that again. So why the increase? First of all, during that time, there's been a huge increase in the amount of development. Development means more roads, more parking lots, and those all have impervious surfaces that need de-icing in the wintertime. During that time also, there's been a greater fear of liability for slips and falls because there's a more litigious population. And there's been a change in expectations. Once upon a time, it was okay there for there to be some snow on the roads, but nowadays, a lot of people expect just black roads the minute that the snow starts falling. And finally, there's been an incorrect understanding of the correct amount of salt that should be put down. A lot of people expect a kind of crunch underfoot and think that's what makes things safe, but it's actually way more salt than is necessary. Now, the main de-icing products that are used are sodium chloride, which is rock salt. That's used by far and away the most. Magnesium chloride and calcium chloride. All of these are used for different road conditions, different temperatures, but you notice that they all contain chloride, and that's the thing that's really a major issue for the environment. It only takes 1 teaspoon of salt to permanently pollute 5 gallons of water. Okay, 1 50-pound bag of salt will permanently pollute all the water in a swimming pool. It goes a long way and it's permanent. Once it gets into the system, it's not going to go away. Nothing's taking it away. This graph here is actually from New Hampshire, and they did a study there on where chloride comes from. They found out that 50% of it comes from parking lots. That's the private contractors, these guys with a snowplow in the wintertime and come around. And there are a lot of them putting down a lot of salt. After that, you can see the municipal roads with 27%, is it? I can't see too well from here, and I don't have it memorized. And then state roads, I think, are 9%. Salt piles, 7%. And then there are some smaller sources like food waste, water softeners, and private roads. Here also in Pennsylvania, there are other possible sources of chloride, including water treatment plants. Now, once it's put down, where does it go? A lot of it gets washed off the roads and the parking lots, and it ends up in runoff. It gets washed down storm drains like the one we have in this picture. Some of it goes directly into the streams, and when it gets into the streams in the wintertime, it causes those extreme spikes in the chloride levels in our local streams. But a whole lot of it, about 40%, it's estimated, infiltrates down into the groundwater. And once it gets down there, it builds up and gradually accumulates over time. And that's really an issue. This picture here shows you a gaining stream. Here in Pennsylvania, the streams are all gaining streams. Now, we normally think that the water in streams comes from rainfall, right? But actually, a lot of the water that's in streams comes from under the ground. It comes from the groundwater. That's the water that keeps the streams flowing all year round. Like if it doesn't rain for a period of time, the streams continue to flow. That's because they're being fed from under the ground. So if the groundwater starts getting saltier, the streams will get saltier too. This graph here is something that we got from Lehigh County Water Authority. They take the drinking water in from the Little Lehigh Creek on Martin Luther King Drive in Allentown. And they've actually been testing at their intake now for over 20 years. And we got this graph of the data. This shows the average levels year-round, okay? And you can see that during that time, it's actually more than doubled. And if you see that red line there, that line is 50 milligrams a liter, and that's the number that's really bad for the wildlife in the streams. These creatures here are mayflies, stoneflies, and caddisflies. They're their Latin names, Ephemeroptera, Plecoptera, and Trichoptera. They're known as EPT organisms. And these are used to determine stream health because they're very, very vulnerable to poor water conditions. They're like a canary in the coal mine. If they start to die, that's an indication that the water quality is really poor. Okay, this graph here shows the results of a study that was done on these organisms. And if you look on the left axis is the number of organisms, and along the bottom shows the chloride levels. And this study showed that once the chloride levels start getting higher, you can see even as you get to like 40, the numbers start dropping off. And by 80, the numbers have gone down significantly. This is where they've come up with the number of 50 milligrams a liter as being the kind of benchmark of whether the water is healthy for these organisms. This chart here actually shows some levels that have been used. The number at the top is the US Environmental Protection Agency number. That was determined back in 1988, and that's 230 milligrams a liter. Actually, the number at the bottom is closer. There's 50 milligrams a liter from Maryland. Currently, Pennsylvania does not have a benchmark like this, okay? But we can look at what other states have. This is something that we're hopefully working on for the future.
If you don't mind, if I can interrupt, has there been state legislation introduced to get that benchmark for Pennsylvania at this point, or has our DEP been looking into this at all?
Not, s-
Has been looking into it.
Okay.
okay.
They proposed something back 5, 10, 15 years ago. Yes. DEP took a stab at this about 15 years ago. It didn't make it forward, and our goal is to propose another change request, like you would change a stream designation. It's a Chapter 23 change.
Okay. Okay. All right, great. Thank you very much.
Okay, besides those little creatures, those little insects, this chloride has a major effect on other types of aquatic wildlife. First of all, it interferes with osmotic regulation, and it also reduces the oxygen content of the water. And that impacts zooplankton, which are right at the bottom of the food chain. It's been found to cause deformities in wood frog tadpoles. They also die at a higher rate. And for fish, it's been found to cause reduced rates of hatching, larval development, and growth overall. This picture here shows our Pennsylvania brook trout. In ponds and lakes, it causes an issue because the saline water is very dense, and it forms a layer which is low in oxygen, and that causes issues, particularly in ponds. It can also cause major effects on soil, plantings. It can actually travel 10 meters off the road edge just by what's called bounce and scatter. And it's also been found in one study to travel up to 300 feet if the salt gets ground down by a lot of traffic and the wind is blowing. So it ends up on whatever's beside the road, farmers' fields, etc. And once it's there, it can reduce soil permeability and fertility. It increases alkalinity and density, and it also reduces the number of soil microbes and their activity, which all contribute to fertility of soil, so it's a big issue. Another major issue is damage to infrastructure. It's been found that in the United States it causes about $5 billion a year in damage. This is roads, bridges, culverts. It breaks down concrete structures. It is a problem for vehicles, and it can also cause very, very expensive damage to flooring in buildings. Besides that, it also it corrodes drinking water pipes, and doing that causes the leaching of toxic chemicals such as lead. A lot of people wonder if green infrastructure is helpful in reducing the amount of chloride that enters the environment from road salt, and unfortunately it's not the case. Riparian buffers and rain gardens only slow it. That's the reason for that is that chloride ions are just they move through the environment very easily, and they're negatively charged, so they're actually repelled by the soil particles. They damage the plantings in green infrastructure, which is an issue, and chloride can also cause an effect where it reduces the ability of green infrastructure to remove other pollutants like heavy metals. And also it degrades the soil that's in green infrastructure and makes it less effective in doing things like preventing stream bank erosion. So it causes a lot of issues all around. Drinking water, our drinking water around here comes from the groundwater and from streams. And unfortunately, water treatment does not remove salt. So this causes issues with local water being salty, okay? One of the hospital systems had an issue with the water becoming so salty in the wintertime that they couldn't allow their patients to drink it anymore. So this slide shows what we are asking people to do at home. So we're asking people to shovel frequently so that snow doesn't turn into ice. shovel before putting salt down, not using salt to melt the snow and ice. Actually, a 12-ounce coffee mug of salt is sufficient for a 20-foot long driveway. If you look at the picture on the left, that's the amount of salt that we see in a lot of places, a lot of parking lots. But the picture on the right actually shows the correct spacing of the particles, which should be about 3 inches apart. After a storm, we're asking people to sweep up excess salt and just use it again for the next time it snows. And then another thing people can do is cover small areas with tarps, like areas like steps, and then remove the tarp after the snowstorm. Next, I'm going to talk about best management practices for municipalities and contractors. The first one is brining. City of Allentown does brining, and this is a photograph I took there. It can actually result in as much as a 75% reduction in salt usage. Brine can be mixed on site. It's actually quite inexpensive to do. It's easy to apply. The advantages are that it sticks to the road. It doesn't move off the road by bounce and scatter. And employees can go out and lay it down early in the morning, and it snows at night. It just stays there until it's needed. It works by reducing the bond between the snow and the ice and the road. And municipalities that use it really, really like doing it. But we've talked to other municipalities around here who have no interest in doing this because they don't really know very much about it. Second thing here is pre-wetting salt. So this is something that can be done if somebody wants to use salt, they can spray it with brine. And doing that will result in a 30% reduction because the salt sticks on the road. It doesn't bounce off once again like dry salt does. Next one is calibrating equipment. This can result in a 50% reduction in the amount of salt use. And this is something that should be done at least once a year or any time there's a change made with the equipment. We get the sense that many municipalities are not doing this either, and they're using way, way, way more salt than they really should be. PennDOT recommends 100 to 300 pounds a lane mile. That's just one lane of a road on one side of a road. We've talked to municipalities that are using over 1,000. It's a massive amount. Another best management practice is something called segmented plows. These are snow plows that have sections along the edges that are spring-loaded, and they raise up and down as it goes across the road. They're great because they actually conform to the shape of the road, and you can actually have a much wider plow blade. That means they get a better, cleaner scrape, and also you save on money with labor because they don't need as many passes with the plow to clear a road. And they've been shown to, in places that have used them, to reduce the amount of salt that needs to be used by 50%. Some other things we're looking for are training of staff. PennDOT offers a program called LTAP, but not all municipalities are using that right now. Salt piles should be stored correctly, under cover, and in such a way that water cannot dissolve them, and they get into the groundwater. Another best management practice are what are called road condition information systems. This picture shows some sensors. These are roadside sensors that actually look at the surface of the road, and they send information back to the central location, giving real-time information about the conditions of the road surface. There are other types of systems. There are sensors that can be mounted on trucks, on the salt trucks, etc. And there are also computerized systems that can go in the salt trucks that actually adjust the amount of salt being applied according to the speed and whether the truck's going up or downhill, etc. And then finally, evaluation of performance. That's like basically evaluating how each event went, and using that information to inform future events. Okay, I'm going to hand over now to Mary, and she's going to talk about what's going on here in the Lehigh Valley and also in Pennsylvania.
Hey, good evening. Mary Rooney. I am the president of Little Lehigh Watershed Stewards and the founding member of the PA Road Salt Action Working Group. So what we're going to talk about a lot here is the Lehigh Valley piece of that action. Jennifer presented a lot of the environmental consequences and different best management practices that municipalities could bring to their winter operations. And again, we presented a lot of the information environmentally because it's stuff people don't know. We've talked to a lot of people. I've made hundreds of phone calls and talked to thousands of people. People think that the road salt just washes off the stream, goes into the creek, washes down to the ocean's salty. You know, life cycle. But the fact that 50% of it is staying in our groundwater and eventually working into our water supplies, as you saw from the chart from Lehigh County Authority. Now, Lehigh County Authority is dealing with a lot of issues right now, lead and PFASs and stuff like that. So it's not immediately on their horizon, but there is no decrease in the trend line right now because the groundwater moves through a system in about maybe a 20-year cycle. So it's just in a building phase because if it takes 20 years to flush out and we're continually increasing what we put in, we're not flushing out as much as we've put in. So think of us as just being kind of a pre-warning system that this problem exists, and it would be a lot better if we tried to take care of some of the physical practices that we could take care of now to prevent a problem in the future, which is, you know, reverse osmosis in our water supplies, very expensive problems. So that's just kind of why we're thinking about this and why we're doing this.
Really quick question for you. And if you don't have the answer, that's totally fine. Do you know when folks started using salt on our roadways?
Pretty much in the 70s. There was a report in the 70s that basically said, and again, we are not saying don't salt. We're saying use the right amount of salt at the right time in the right place. That's all we're saying. Because there's a report in the 70s that basically said highways that are salted have less accidents.
So for about the past 50 years, we
Yes.
have been seeing this phenomenon, and
Yes. And as Jennifer said, I mean, you guys are of that age where, you know, your dad put chains on the tires in the winter and you actually had snow tires with spikes because at that time the expectation wasn't that the roads were going to be blacktop and you were going to have to actually drive through some snow during a snowy period. That's not the expectation now. And you guys all know the people with the SUVs are the ones going the fastest. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, yeah, you can drive, but you can't stop. So,
thank you.
yeah. I'm having that same problem. Any trick? There we go. Okay. So there are two segments to this conversation. I'm going to be talking about our Lehigh Valley group, which is what we're presenting to you guys, Lehigh, Northampton. We're trying to gear it up with PennDOT work area, so that would be Carbon County, maybe Schuylkill County too. And then there will be the Pennsylvania group, which is kind of more you're saying, what are we doing in the greater sense? So we're trying to do two things right now, and this presentation is part of it. We're trying to talk about best management practices, and as Jennifer said, it's not just municipalities, it's the private contractors, it's any of people who are doing winter maintenance. I mean, I've spoken to two of the major hospital systems in the valley, and one of them has spent $500,000 just on salt, the physical purchase of salt. Now, you know, this winter we had 9 storms, and those storms were all like a ½ inch deep, and we put about 3/4 inch of salt on every road to take care of that ½ inch of snow. And I'm joking here, but you saw the articles in the newspaper about how we're running out of salt. We actually wouldn't run out of salt if they didn't put 1,000 pounds per lane mile and they put 300 pounds a lane mile. That's 3 times the amount of salt. I actually got articles published in the Morning Call and Lehigh Valley News basically saying, because they put up these articles saying, we're running out of salt. And I said, well, there's another side to that story. They're actually putting too much salt down. Not everywhere, but we've talked to multiple municipalities. And a lot of them, when you do the numbers, are putting more salt, way more salt than PennDOT recommends. Okay, so we're talking municipalities. We're trying to figure out how to talk to private contractors. I've talked to hospital systems, we're talking to colleges, we're talking to groups that have large winter maintenance activities and trying to say calibration. Calibration doesn't really cost anything. If you actually calibrated your equipment and you said, I know that when this equipment spins at this rate, it's going to put 300 pounds a lane mile out, you could go out and deliver that. Except for the couple of the bigger cities, I haven't talked to anybody who actually calibrates their equipment. So again, we're not talking about spending a ton of money here. We're trying to just talk about some common sense things that could be the first low-hanging fruit to just reduce the amount of salt that's going on the roads. Again, we're not saying no salt. Salt is a safety thing. This is not a no or no, you know. This is a, let's just get sensible about it and try to maybe save the township some money too. So, and then the second thing is we're trying to ask for more public awareness, because when you talk to the townships, they say, we're between a rock and a hard place here. If we don't put all this down, somebody's calling and having my ass about the fact that the roads aren't clear and the roads aren't clear fast enough. So the poor guys doing the winter maintenance, they're kind of getting on both sides, you know. Oh yeah, save money. Oh, get the roads clear. So it's public awareness is going to have to be a big part of this.
And if I could just say, when I was a Forks Township supervisor, when you buy salt from CoSTARS, you have to buy a minimum amount every single year. We had years where we were like, we don't even know what we're going to do with all the salt. So townships have an incentive to get rid of that salt because the next year they have to buy a minimum amount, whether it snowed the year before or not. So it just keeps building up and they keep storing it and storing it. And that is a major problem.
I actually have talked to some of the people at CoSTARS, and I didn't realize that you had to buy a minimum amount. I thought you just had to buy whatever you said you were going to buy, if you understand what I said. If you're going to buy 100,000 tons and you can't buy 40. But I didn't realize that if you're like little small borough over here, maybe you still have to buy 10,000 tons. I don't know. So that's great. I appreciate you telling me that. That's definitely a problem. It is. I mean, probably wasn't the problem this year because people were saying they were having trouble, but as you saw in Jennifer's graph, some winters, everybody knows, some winters I cross-country ski, some winters I can't even get the skis out, you know.
I would say the only thing that, and maybe you'll have it later on in the presentation, but I know as somebody that has to plow, the biggest thing that we're constantly hearing from the customers, you know, the liability. And the liability, they want us dumping salt before it snows to help melt it before it hits the ground. And they say if they see slush, they see white, we're in trouble. So it's like the liability and the way insurance companies and the way litigation works, somebody slips and falls, you know, the cost of salt's minimal. And somebody getting hurt is the end-all be-all anymore, and everybody's sue happy. So I like your presentation. I think it's very interesting. I never really thought from the perspective of, you know, where's the salt going? But unfortunately, we live in a world where everybody's so afraid of getting sued that it's almost like dump the salt down so nobody ever even thinks about slipping, or, you know, let's close school for a week because we got an inch of snow because we don't want anybody to get in a car accident.
Everything you're saying is very true. So I've actually done a presentation with some of the hospital systems because, again, you're trying to figure out where are the best places, and hospital systems employ a lot of the different contractors. So my thinking was if we got some of the hospital systems on board, they would, if they pushed that down to their contractors, maybe there'd be benefits across the board. And I completely understand what you're saying from the contractor side. Mayo Clinic, Rochester, Minnesota, so a very snowy place, they reduced their salt use by 60% with no increase in slips, trips, or falls, and they did it over a 3-year period. So I've been talking to the hospitals and saying, again, as Jennifer said, it's a perception of what is the correct amount of salt versus how you would do the job using some best management practices. It doesn't help the contractor because, like us, it's hard to go out and talk to. We have 19 townships in our watershed, and that's just one watershed in a portion of Lehigh County. There's 2,500 townships in the state of Pennsylvania, or probably even more than that. So, like you're saying, how do you get that message out? So one of the things we're going to ask you to do is help us get that message out, maybe calendars, web pages, different things like that. Because, like you, not everybody thinks about this. We're not, people aren't bad. The winter maintenance people aren't doing the bad thing. We're just trying to say, let's think 10 years out and try to prevent some of this problem now. So, Need my little Superman finger. We're being cute here.
Is she supposed to be pointing at the screen or at the computer? Yeah, just say
I
that's.
don't actually have many slides, so, yeah, why don't you just go to the next one? Okay. One thing that was suggested to us is we tried doing a municipal open house. And the idea is if you got a few of the townships who are doing some of these things, brining, calibrating, and got an open house and allowed some other township people to come in 2 hours and sometime in the fall before things really heat up, that they could learn from each other. So we're trying to figure out, I've got a day job, Jennifer has a day job, you're trying to figure out how to do this, but that is one of the things we're talking to. We've talked to Allentown and we've talked to Easton. So it's mostly the bigger cities that have the better practices, so we're trying to talk to them. So the idea would be municipal employees talking to municipal employees, some hands-on stuff. It's not all coming from somebody else top down. It's more going side to side. And they could talk about the problems like, John was bringing up about, yeah, it sounds great in theory, but when everybody's screaming at you in the winter, how do you actually implement this? This isn't going to be solved tomorrow, but the only way to start talking about it to get to a solution is to start. So that's what we're doing. So that's what we're going to try to do. Jennifer's working on that. I'm working on that a little bit. If we get that rocking and rolling, we'd like to have you guys help us publicize it. These townships don't know me from Adam, so if I come and say, hey, go to an open house, they're going to be like, what? But maybe if you guys said, hey, this thing's going on and we think it'd be a good idea if some people went, 1 or 2 people, winter maintenance people from the township went, maybe some people would come. Don't know. Go ahead, Flo. Again, I've sort of alluded to this, what you can do to help us, assist us with public awareness. I mean, it will help the townships to have people to start understanding this cycle. And ideas, hearts and minds are not going to be changed today or tomorrow, but some people, you guys are going to leave here knowing more than you knew coming in. And we just got to do that over and over again. So that's one thing. Help us with awareness, websites, any resident letters, I don't know, whatever you put out. We haven't kind of worked that out yet. Introduce us to any municipalities that you know of that are actually using BMPs. If you know anybody on the contractor side, I'd like to talk to anybody. I'd be willing to talk to insurance companies. You know what I mean? They all have to drink water too, so.
You can also go to ask to speak at township meetings about it.
Yeah, we do, but there's limited resources. If we get the open house, please promote it. And then I wanted to kind of open the floor too. If you guys had other ideas, we would be interested in those. Do I have another slide? Yeah, okay. So again, we'll hold that thought, but just think if you have some other ideas of where you think we could work together with publicity or any ideas, we're looking for those. So the Pennsylvania group, it's a statewide group. We have 50 or 60 active members. We have watershed groups. We have county conservation districts. We have Delaware River Basin Commission, Susquehanna River Basin Commission. We have some water suppliers. So we're trying to get various entities to come together and talk about how we can move the needle on road salt use in Pennsylvania. So that's what it is. We're creating a central resource of high-quality materials. There's tons of information out there about road salt, but it's almost information overload. We're trying to create some open PowerPoints that people could use, similar to what we did tonight to talk in different areas. PennDOT has a good LTAP training, and they have a winter maintenance training. And I've talked to townships whose people who have actually taken the training, and they're not implementing any of it. So there's some sort of disconnect there. And again, I'm not pointing fingers. This is just the way it is. People are busy. Everybody has an agenda, and people think more salt the better. They're getting pushed. They might be pushed by the people above them. So we're trying to figure out how to talk to PennDOT to encourage them, to encourage PennDOT to help the municipalities take this up as a better cause. And then if we can, it's a tough environment right now, but maybe find some sources of grant money. Townships need, if they're going to say upgrade equipment, they would need some money to do that. You know, where could that money be? Find some sources. Oh, yeah. And on the statewide, New Hampshire has a program called Green Snow Pro where there's actually a release of liability for the contractors if they take this program and then they do the proper documentation. So in some of the trainings I've taken, they have said the best prevention for liability is a contractor who writes when he went to the site, how much material he put down, and what the temperature and conditions were. Because then if there was a lawsuit that actually happened, you could say, I was at the site at this time, I put the recommended amount down, here were the conditions, and you have the documentation. The fact that the contractors don't do this, they go, they salt, they oversalt to protect themselves, but they have no documentation of what they did, leads them more open to liability because it's more of a my word against yours. Where if I said, the idea is you go to the school district, you know the parking lot is a half an acre and you know the 300 pounds per 1,000 square feet. I'm just making up a number, but that's how much salt you should put down per the requirements. You put it down, you document it. That's a great protection against liability. So it's just not a system that we've incorporated in Pennsylvania, in New Hampshire, and in some of the states that have voluntary contractor training and certification programs. That's the idea. You document what you're doing. It's almost like any other field, you know. I'm an engineer by training, you know, document. How did you make that decision? What were your backups? Those types of things. So we're trying to get something like that also potentially on the books for Pennsylvania. These are all long programs. There is a House bill right now in terms of developing a best management practices manual for the state, trying to look at training and those types of things. So working with our representatives on that. I think that might be. Okay, so we have at our Little Lehigh Watershed Stewards webpage, we're sort of being the website for the Pennsylvania effort right now. We have a road salt deep dive page. We have a 20-page document with a lot of pictures and not a lot of words that talk about some of the things we've spoken about tonight. That's a resource for people to look at who just want to get that, you know, read a couple paragraphs on the topic information. And then this is me and Jennifer, our emails. So we're basically saying our asks to you are help where you can. Introduce us to townships, let us know if townships are doing a good job, or you know some people who might be of the type of personality who might be willing to be a municipal educator for another municipality, and then advertise, like publicize the fact that road salt has a cost. It just is a buildup of the chlorides in the watershed. So, is there anything else? Any ideas?
Question.
Sure.
Do you have a flyer for this open house? Do you have a generic letter? I mean, I could send to the municipalities in my district. I'm District 2. I could send it on behalf of me being the chair for the Energy and Environment and Use Committee.
We don't yet because we don't have the formalities of the facility and the date yet. So we're still looking for that. If you guys had a great, you know, we need to find a place that has brining facilities. Plus, that's why we're talking to Allentown. We'll try to talk to Easton. If they have the facilities plus a meeting room to facilitate that, we're still trying to find that right location and the right date. So, but yes, if we have one, I would be happy to send it to you.
Definitely, and I will be happy to send it out to, you know, the 7 municipalities in my district. I could even send it out to, you know, the county on behalf of the EELU committee. I'd be happy to do that.
Again, if any other ideas, you guys have been around this block for sure longer than I have on this stuff. So if you have any ideas, let me know. That'd be great.
I did contact my friend who is on the Forks Township Supervisors Board. Told him to check out this, the video, because he has a meeting tonight. But this will be on our website forever and ever. So, you know, putting this on Facebook, getting it out, having that link to this meeting would be helpful.
We did a series of 8 Facebook posts last winter, kind of like one every couple of days in January, just to sort of take one topic and 1 or 2 paragraphs. We have that available too as something that you guys could take a look at. So, any other ideas? Well, I appreciate your time.
So much. This is really informative. Yeah. I'm forgetting my job. Okay. Any other questions or, no? All right, we will adjourn the meeting.